nothing ventured, nothing gained is really so prevalent here. There are often times when failure is just inevitable, but it doesn't mean that you cannot succeed somehow, some way, somewhere. Commitment, discipline, and consistency are the three most important factors. If you possess those and you practice them, you inevitably will find success somewhere down the road.
Welcome, everyone, to the Road Less Traveled Show. This is a show about people who were successful in a previous career and left that career to go down a different path. I'm your co-host, Richard Coyne.
And I'm your co-host, Bill Zahller.
On today's show, we have Tony Acquaviva, who's joined us today. Tony, we're so glad you're here. Thanks for joining.
Delighted to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Tony, for being on the Road Less Traveled Show. Well, can you tell us a little bit about your background, what first career you started in, and how long you were in that line of work?
Sure. Well, actually, my very first career would be fitness. I have a master's in exercise science. Fitness has always been my love. And I was very active up until just a few years back. Actually, when COVID happened, I stopped teaching in a group fitness type environment. Mm-hmm. It just didn't seem as though we were having the draw, and the gyms weren't consistent in the hours they were opening. So I migrated away from the group fitness type activities, and I stayed more with my own singular needs as an individual, just trying to stay fit and healthy. Mm-hmm. Eventually, I migrated into the car business too. I owned a dealership in South Carolina. Mm-hmm. And I had that dealership for 6 years. In the meantime, I'd always dabbled into and was fond of the mortgage business, which is my career now. And we are mortgage bankers located in 47 states and growing rapidly.
Excellent. Yeah. Only have 3 more states to go. And how long have you been in the mortgage business, Tony?
Well, I'm licensed about 30 years.
Okay. Excellent.
So I've been licensed for quite some time, but actually as a mortgage banker, it's only been the past few years.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay. Got it. So Tony, as you moved into the mortgage business and, kind of away from the car business. You mentioned you had that business for 6 years, right? So you exited that business, maybe fitness, maybe somewhere in the car dealership. Is there a humorous story you can share, something that happened to you that was funny along the way?
Oh my Lord, we could share many good stories with you, but often you're asked for financials. And we're so accustomed to that in the mortgage side of the business. Yeah. And I was dually functioning at one time with both businesses. And they were amazed at how rapidly I was able to have everything accessible to them when they had to do audits. And it's simply because in the mortgage business, it is so critical that you have everything in order and aligned, because you are continually audited by your governmental agencies, which is, as a bank, we're governed by certain agencies. So one time an auditor came and he questioned why I was so efficiently prepared for the audit. Was it that I was expecting something wrong? And I was explaining to him that I was in the mortgage business, and we had a little bit of a chuckle over it. Turns out that the auditor is a bicyclist, as am I. So we went from what looked like it could have been a very tenuous moment there to a very congenial group type healthy environment moment. I was very concerned, but that was, I thought he really thought of maybe I was trying to cover something up. Yeah. And it turned out to be a very pleasant exchange. And clearly we passed the audits with little difficulty.
Well, that in a way, that's cool. And I'm so glad it worked out that way. And honestly, I've actually heard a similar story before. I can't remember who shared it with us, but it was something along the lines of, IRS auditors are people too. I mean, again, they've got a tough job to do. And honestly, I wouldn't want to do that job, but, a lot of times, you treat somebody that in a way, whether forget it, even an audit, just anybody who in a way could be adversarial with you. If you treat them with respect and try to find common ground, try to find some commonality, most of the time you can break that ice and break through that situation. So, yeah.
That's true. And our auditors were not from the IRS, which they are the auditors who actually govern the warehouse lines and the funding that we get for
Ah,
cars and or blue book, as they call it. So yeah,
gotcha.
they're much more critical of you in
Mhm.
theory. They're not necessarily looking for something wrong. They're looking to make sure everything is right.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Way back when I was in grad school, a professor, this guy told a story about it. Back to the car dealer for a second. He asked this woman why she bought a new car, and he said, "Well, I needed new tires, so I bought a new car." So perfect, right?
Well, the area where the dealership is required more resale cars, believe it or not, than new cars,
Mhm.
because it's located near a base. And it was
Okay.
typical that we sold more resale cars. So you often get manufacturers that will offer you certain vehicles based upon how frequently you turn over the type. So trucks were more commonly sold and
Mhm.
or resale cars. So we didn't always have the pick of the litter relative to the newer brands, but trucks seemingly are a good seller in those areas of the country. So we got a pick of trucks as opposed to the cars. And we went to auctions quite often to buy used cars to bring to the lot to sell. And that was a huge
Mhm.
business for us, because the used car business, or resale, as we would say, was much more popular in that area than new cars were.
Hmm. Interesting. And again, I'm sure you're not in that business anymore, but I'm sure you've heard the crazy used resale market for cars now is just insane.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, who would have ever thought that? It's nuts. So
Yeah, I'm trading in a car now at my home in Asheville, and that car is 11 years old, and they're giving me $16,000 for that car. It's
mhm.
amazing. It's amazing what's happening out there.
Yeah,
They're in demand. People
Yeah.
need cars.
that's right.
Well, Tony, what was a deciding factor that got you to change the initial road you were on? And then, like you said, you've been in 30 years in the mortgage business, but like the banking business that you've added to it in the last 6 years, you said, did it kind of just all fall into place, or was there something that one deciding pivotal moment?
Well, you make a decision. You typically start out as a broker if you're starting from ground zero, and then you migrate through the process, and typically you become what's called a correspondent lender, which is where you're actually closing the loans in your name, but you sign an allonge at the closing and you're immediately turning it over to an investor. And then you would migrate into banking. So what happened in 2008, when the mortgage market really took its tumble? It started in 5 and 6, right? And by 8, it was in its tumble. Many of the people with whom I worked on a competitive level found that their companies were in trouble, and they started to migrate toward me, because we all knew one another as friendly competitors, because we were all builder-based people. We handled the large builder accounts. So what was happening is people were migrating to my company. They saw that I was still stable, and I saw the company growing, and I thought, well, we have choices here, and we have to make a good decision, and it needs to be prudent. And my decision was that we should go toward the direction of becoming our own bank, mortgage bank. So we did. And it's an arduous journey. If you're an individual and you're handling all of this on your own, it takes a while. You have to have a certain amount of revenue, capital, etc. So we did it. And we went from being a correspondent lender to doing $3 billion a year within 2.5 years, which is pretty amazing.
Right.
It's a lot of volume.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yes.
quite impressive. Yeah. So Tony, as you mentioned, I'm wondering about obstacles, and you mentioned obviously arduous process to really become the mortgage bank, as you said. Maybe shifting. You also talked about when you were doing the car business, you always dabbled in mortgages a little bit, but as you were making that full-time shift over to mortgages, were there any obstacles you encountered early on?
Getting licensed in certain states is always an obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
Some states require considerably more documentation and more time. For example, getting licensed in the state of New York is at least 20 times more expensive than getting licensed in some of the southern states like Alabama, Louisiana.
Mhm.
And it took approximately 18 months to get a license in New York. Yes. Whereas
Wow.
it took weeks to get licensed in some of the other states. So getting licensed in certain states is clearly an obstacle if you want to do business in those states.
Mhm.
Overall, it's a business where people don't give you the benefit of the doubt because you're dealing in finance and you're dealing with people's mortgages and finances and money. So there's a considerable amount of compliance that goes into the business.
Mhm.
And there was a time when we started in the mortgage business where you could have 2 or 3 people and run a compliance department. And you cannot run a compliance department without 8 or 9 people now. It takes 3 times the amount of people to run a mortgage company from a compliance perspective.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is a lot of that driven by post housing crisis, Dodd-Frank, things like that, or is it just
I'd say the majority of it is because of that.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
licensure is one issue that we fall under the reign of compliance, but there's call reports and each state requires its own call report, and those have to be done on a quarterly basis, and somebody has to prepare those. And even though you generate that information through the system, somebody has to be inputting it and monitoring it. In addition to that, you have a plethora of other concerns that all fall under compliance, disclosures, the timeliness, all of those things that make a difference on the laws fall under our compliance department, and they require manpower.
Yeah. I mean, certainly anytime I've ever done a mortgage or refinanced or so, my hand cramps from all the signatures I have to do. And, that's just, ballooned up even more and, since the housing crisis. So, yeah.
Hopefully we'll get back to the days of a HUD statement again. Much easier than the new closing disclosure. However, we're using a closing disclosure now, which also requires more compliance because the rules now require that if you make mistakes greater than a certain percentage, it now falls on the lending institution. So you have to have people who monitor the closing disclosures and the initial disclosures just to make certain that you are not going to be responsible for fees that you don't want to pay and or shouldn't have had to pay if you disclose properly, which would cut into your potential profitability.
Yeah. a lot of red tape, I'm sure. In that I mean, obviously with there's a lot of money involved, there's going to be a lot of oversight and scrutiny on that on many levels. Well, Tony, as you were setting up your mortgage business, when you're starting out, can you think back to like what one of your first victories were? Was it landing a large builder or contract?
When I started in the mortgage business, I was pretty blessed. I was working for a national company, a bank, but it was the mortgage division of a bank. And I was fortunate enough to be the #1 retail producer in the country. So I had a really nice book of business, a good following. And back then, builders did not own their own mortgage companies. So they called upon outside companies to be the approved lender for the builder. So my rapport was with builders, and that was my initial introduction into the mortgage business. So I started out in a very positive fashion, and I've maintained many of those relationships through the years. I still have them now, and I still do the business. And even though some of them have chosen to open up their own companies, they still need someone who can do the products and programs that they don't offer. Right? Because most builders will stick to the generic A-paper products. I'm one of those lenders. There are very few of us in the country who actually underwrites all of his own products. So we underwrite our A-paper products. We underwrite our non-QM loans, which are the fallouts that don't traditionally meet the Fannie Mae requirements. So they would be bank statement programs or guideline issues that no longer meet the criteria. Foreign national lending, construction lending, renovation lending, reverse mortgage. We underwrite and handle all of that under our own roof. So that makes us rather unique in the marketplace.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So Tony, with your new company in your mortgage business, and your 30 years experience, is there a humorous story you can share? Something that you experienced along the way?
It's pleasing. I have a client that I'm on my 17th mortgage for.
Wow.
Well, I've done the family, the children, the grandchildren, and it is rather humorous when someone calls and says, yes, my grandmother said that you guys did their loan many, many years ago, and my parents said you did their loan, and now it's our turn to buy a house and we'd like you to do our loan. It's both gratifying and humorous that you can recognize the value that you can bring to someone's lives in as much as people remember you. I've had the same cell phone number for 33 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So people save it, they remember it, and they call you back. And that's always good for a nice chuckle.
Yeah, very cool. And tell you what, that's that consistency in building a relationship and having, building a trust factor with people that you're going to have generations come to you after their parents or grandparents experience. That says a lot. Says a lot about you and about your business and how you conduct. And, and again, you mentioned it as well, during the housing crisis, you stood tall and where others didn't. And that's incredible too.
Yeah,
it was a tough time.
Yeah, and it was the difference in us sustaining our business versus collapsing like so many of the others did.
Mm-hmm.
We say that all the time too. We're in the multifamily business, but we emphasize that really we're in the relationship business and not the real estate business, because it all comes down to relationships at the end of the day.
That is the truth. One of the unique product types that we have as well is we will finance up to 10 units. So we'll do the commercial stuff in-house as well, up to 10 units. You don't really find traditional lending institutions that do that.
Right.
You typically have to go to a different type of mortgage lender for that stuff.
Right.
So we're trying to encompass enough product to serve the majority of our population.
That's great.
As opposed to just a sect of the population.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, I guess that kind of ties into our next question there with where you are in your journey today. You talked about you're already in 47 states and, growing at a rapid rate. I guess that all ties in offering enough products to everybody out there, or the majority of people out there. So where do you see you going from here, and as your expansion plans?
Well, our goal is to get to just over 5 billion this year. Mm-hmm. We want to go from 3 to 5 billion. And we will start servicing our own loans this year, which is a huge leap forward as well. Mm-hmm. So now when we take the information from the consumer and provide them with the mortgage, we could now lead them all the way through to the time they pay the loan off. And we're about to put in our own standalone second mortgage program, so that if they come back and they want to put in a pool or they want to renovate or anything of the sort, we'll be able to offer them second mortgages if they so choose. All those benefits are designed to, number one, enhance the experience of our consumer and create a relationship of trust and comfort so that they stay with us for all of their financing needs.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's great.
That's 2022's goal.
That's excellent. I mean, 40% growth is a great goal.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, we've mapped out a plan and we're putting it into motion. So it will start happening as we speak.
That's great.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. We'll stay in touch with you to see how the year goes for you. So that's great. Very, very nice. So Tony, along your travels and in what you've been doing all these years, is there anything you do to give back to, help enrich the lives of others? Obviously, you're making a huge impact when you have generations coming back to you for mortgages, but is there anything else you can talk about in terms of any kind of give back?
With pleasure. Sure. We do many different things for different categories. For example, we do a lot with the Veterans Administration. Mm-hmm. We hold housing program opportunities to teach many veterans. Many veterans go into the service, young men and women. They're not typically in the world per se as adults. And when they come out of the service, they're now adults with not as much knowledge on financing and housing. So we provide programs for the veterans, And we have a program where we hire a certain amount of veterans around the country. We work with Veterans Administration housing programs. In addition, we did the Trek Across America for the Veterans Administration. They went down 11 different states, and we sponsored that program, all in an effort to help veterans. And I do think it's important that we recognize the impact that a veteran has on our country. And typically speaking, more and more people are veterans now. You'll see certain states, specifically Florida is one of them. We have the second highest population of veterans in the country.
Wow.
And we need to serve them. So we develop our programs here, and then we take them around the country. And we do various other programs as well, renovation type programs for people. Reverse mortgages is a huge benefit to the elderly community. So we hold seminars on reverse financing, and we give back every year related to Make-A-Wish, things, those type organizations that need monetary help. We find ways to create opportunities within the company for giving back. And to be charitable within the company, it breeds a different kind of emotion and feeling within the organization as well. And I like that feeling. I want people to feel as though they are part of something that's just bigger than a mortgage.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. We actually, we're big believers in giving back ourselves. We certainly do, educational things like this and other monthly meetings we host, to help others. And, because many people helped us early on in our endeavors and things like that. But we also recently created the Park Capital Partners Foundation, which is a 503c nonprofit, 501c3. I always say that wrong. And, what one thing that we did was we set it up so that, when an investor invests with us, we actually make a donation to honor that investor to a charity of their choice. And Wounded Warrior is one of them, among others. I think we have about 15 charities in there, but it's been very, very, very successful, something we're very proud of. And, again, it's just another way we can try to give back. We, donate a portion of our profits and things like that. And, but yeah, that's great. Again, I do think that, when you're involved with the community and you have such an outreach and such an impact like you do, giving back is something that I think is definitely, it gives you a good feeling. I think I like your point about the corporate culture and how it envelops a good feeling within your company, as well as doing good for others. So that's great.
And when I closed one of the restaurants that I participated in down here, we donated the kitchen to the Florence Fuller Foundation, which is a foundation for children, privileged children, to feed and house them. So that was beautiful. They got a brand new kitchen, if you will.
Right. That's great.
Very nice.
Anything that you can do. And it starts locally.
Yeah.
You start to give back to your community locally. And then hopefully it migrates through different offices around the country. And it sets an example.
Right.
That's great. Well, Tony, what's something you've recently implemented in your business that's allow you to scale and continue to grow?
Training is a huge factor. We are setting up training programs for students that are graduating from college and have an interest in our field. So we put together a training program. I think it's going to be fruitful for young kids who want to explore our field and see if they like it. So we've had quite a few that have come through our program in the form of an internship first, if they so choose, or with the intent on becoming a full-time team member of our organization. That has been a tremendous success. We have many colleges around us in this area. So we've gone to the colleges and we've created incentives through the universities to allow students that graduate in certain schools and or have an interest in doing what we do. And we're giving them opportunity. And at the same time, we're cultivating quite a good member to add to our employee base. It's been a huge positive impact on us. Young people that want to get into the business and learn the way we learned.
Right. That's great. Yeah. To give them, kind of a guided path versus trying to figure out where to go on their own with that education is key, I'm sure.
Sure. And then
Yeah.
from an artificial intelligence perspective, we're becoming one of the leaders in that area.
Hmm.
We actually have so much tech happening. We didn't start out that way, clearly, but it is necessary now. Younger people want to be more tech savvy and they want the opportunity. We can still provide a personal level of service if you so choose. But now, for those who prefer to be more tech savvy, we have become quite tech savvy. And literally, you can get a loan from start to finish on your phone, and you can have that handled within a day.
Uh,
It's amazing what can be done now. I mean, again, anytime I do anything and somebody says, well, you have to send it over via fax. I'm like, fax? What's a
Right.
fax? What, are you kidding me? I'm used to submitting documents online to a secure portal or something. Come on, fax. I mean, there are fax services that you can actually, send a page or two, or even for free. But it's kind of like a fax. What?
You're right. But
Yeah.
that's a huge move in the direction of finance to be
Yeah.
so tech savvy.
Yeah, absolutely. And quite honestly, again, the thing that I think is such an important thing to be able to leverage that technology is because people are expecting that now. I expect that I can send in my some of my documents at 11 p.m. when it's convenient for me versus having to find time during the day to talk to somebody to do it and handle certain things. But yeah, excellent.
I agree.
Yeah, and again, as well, it makes everything virtual. You can do it from anywhere. So
Right.
good stuff. Yeah.
That's a great thing about having kids too, is they can work out all our tech issues for us. So.
That's the truth.
But I don't understand. It's intuitive to them because they've grown up with it, like you're saying.
Whenever I have an issue, I just scream millennial and somebody comes running in.
Exactly.
Yeah. The digital natives have it made. Exactly.
But
So
you can hand one of the children 9 years and younger your phone, and they can tell you things that could be done with that phone that you never even knew existed.
right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've watched mine do things with it. Like, I guess, because I don't know, as an adult, I think you figure out one way and it works. I don't look for 5 other ways to do the exact same task. I just do the same way, but they continue to explore and figure it out.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
Thank God for them. We need them.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tony, what advice would you share with somebody who's considering making a path change?
The most obvious is the fear to make a career change or to make a move. It's cliched perhaps, but more people don't do what they should be doing or need to do simply out of fear. That old adage that says, no, nothing ventured, nothing gained, is really so prevalent here. You really need to put your foot in the water and take a step. And yep, you're not always going to succeed. And there are often times when failure is just inevitable, but it doesn't mean that you cannot succeed somehow, some way, somewhere. You just have to be persistent. And if you asked me what attributes are most important, I would have to tell you that commitment, discipline, and consistency are the 3 most important factors. If you possess those and you practice them regularly, you inevitably will find success somewhere down the road. It may take a little bit longer. Some paths are shorter than others, but success is typically inevitable when you practice those 3 attributes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, practice your craft, etc. And actually, many of us have read the 10X rule from Grant Cardone, and in there it talks about something that I absolutely love, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's along the lines of defeating fear. And the best way you can defeat fear is by robbing of its greatest resource, and that is time.
Yep.
Go. Don't think and dwell and let it fester in your brain. Go. Take action. Do it. And just don't let the time make it work bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, and when you're mature, you feel like there's more risk. You don't have as much time to succeed. You need things to move quicker because you're more mature now, and you feel that there's less time. But that's not necessarily true. I think that if you stick with the program, I always say stay on your path, stick with your program, And even if it takes a little bit longer, the journey getting there is gratifying. And if you're gratified, you're pleased with yourself and you're pleased with your results, and that is your motivation to continue moving forward.
Also,
Absolutely, yeah. Well, Tony, what's the best way for our listeners to reach out to you and learn more about what you do and your company?
Well, they can either email or call me. If it's appropriate, my email address is tony@usmtg.com. And I have people call me 954-328-7662. I am more than delighted to speak to anybody who wants advice, direction, help. It's my pleasure.
Great. Well, we appreciate that. Yeah, we'll add those in the show notes below. And thank you for that. Well, Tony, we want to thank you for being on the Road Less Traveled show today. We really enjoyed the conversation and wish you continued success.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here. So thank you both.
absolutely, Tony. Thank you for being on. We really want to thank you. And we'd also like to thank our listeners for giving us a 5-star rating. Please continue to do so we can bring you more great content like Tony Acquaviva on today. And again, thanks for being on, Tony. We'd also like to thank Park Capital Partners that sponsors the show. And remember, folks, we have the Park Capital Value Add Investment Fund that's available. That's a 506c, as well as we mentioned earlier, the Park Capital Partners Foundation nonprofit. Thank you again for being on, Tony. And remember, folks, the road less traveled may be calling you. We recommend that you listen and take action. Thanks for joining.